It's making me a little nervous having this many people in the room, but I'm going to try to pull it together and get through it all right. So I want to thank everybody in this terrific crowd we have today for coming and for braving the troubles of the parking lot, for which I apologize, even though I have absolutely no control over it. As Democrats, we spend a lot of our time looking backward, how things used to be when we had presidents like Obama and Clinton and FDR and Carter, perhaps the most visionary president we ever had. And I wonder where we would be today if Reagan had left the solar panels on the White House. Our theme today is just that, looking forward. We have all bitched and moaned and railed against the machine. The Supreme Court, our state house, Republican legislators, and fellow citizens over everything from the loss of our 50-year-old right to make our own health decisions to what books the state will allow our kids to read. Before we get into the program today, which I'm really excited about, there are two things I want to say. First, this is an extremely sad time for our country. When I heard the news Thursday night that Donald Trump had been indicted, I was on the verge of tears. Tears of happiness that finally he would be held to account. But also tears of sadness that this is what our country has come to. As a card-carrying daughter of the American Revolution, I can only imagine what my ancestors would be thinking. Republicans are so damn intent on what would the framers do. Well, I guarantee you they would not have an indicted felon running for president and continuing to be supported by their national party and 90% of his opponents. They would likely be rolling over in their crypts, watching news analysis of how the Secret Service will protect Trump in prison if he is elected. I guess the next thing will be state dinners in the prison commissary, lowering the dress code a little. So this is a bizarre and sad time, and we've all had, just as we just did, a yes moment. But I urge us to stay calm and cool, and maybe even a little reserved, while this case and the others that I believe will come wind their way through the courts. I have often thought that had the Republican Party not reveled so much in the Dobbs ruling, fist bumping and cheering and ticking off the list of their next targets, that possibly public anger would have been less pronounced, and they might have salvaged some of their 2022 campaigns. Of course, I'm really glad that they were not smart enough to do that. But we are. Do I get an amen? Thank you. Secondly, this month in my monthly message, I talked about Governor McMaster's hunt them down like dogs comment. Right? We all know that apologies are meaningless. Winning is where we are going to get our revenge. In the research that I did related to this issue, I found some very interesting facts about public opinion in South Carolina on some of our key issues, and I'd like to share them. A 2022 survey commissioned by Planned Parenthood found 70% of South Carolina voters believe abortion should be a decision left to a woman and her doctor. Another 2022 survey taken by a Republican pollster found 86% of the state's voters supported background checks and 79% were in favor of red flag laws. A 2020 survey conducted by conservation voters of South Carolina found 64% of SC voters think climate change is a serious problem. I'm thinking about that. And by a 2-to-1 margin, they support 100% clean energy by 2050, which I guess means the state is going to have to kind of come up with a some kind of benefit for buying an electric car. And finally, in a survey conducted by AARP South Carolina in 2021, 73% of South Carolinians said expanding Medicaid is extremely or very important. That result includes 69% of Republicans. These are our issues, and our job is to reach voters and put a finer point on it, non-voters, and help them to make the connection between the issues they care about and the people they vote for. The Dobbs decision had that effect on tens of millions of young women across the country. Can we replicate that here on a smaller scale? And that segment gives me a segue to our first speaker. If I walked around this room and asked each one of you what your number one question would be about the next 2 election cycles, I'm betting the vast majority would say, what are we going to do differently? GCDP Chair Amanda McDougald Scott is going to kick off our forward-looking program today by telling you what the party has planned that is different, very different, from how it's approached elections in previous years. Amanda's going to take 5 minutes to bring us all up to speed, and after that, we'll have a 5-minute Q&A. Any questions that we don't get answered, I'm pretty sure if I forward them to Amanda, she'll get back to me with responses. Amanda, the floor is yours.
All right. Hello, Democrats. It is so good to see so many of you here. And I'm really excited about this announcement that I'm about to make. Ever since last year, and looking at how the elections were going with our candidates and so on and so forth, I started really thinking deeply about what we needed to do to instill a lot more hope and to actually have a real strategy with very good, credible, quality candidates who could actually also be supported here in Greenville County. Because I don't believe in recruiting candidates in Greenville County if we don't have the infrastructure or the campaign management expertise to help do that. And we have some expertise in the room already, but we also have varying levels of bandwidth and just not enough capacity to be able to handle all of it. So the solution that I came up with is we needed to really focus on where we can win or at least make some progress in some districts here in Greenville County. So I have identified 6 priority districts in which I know that based off of the numbers and some of the previous successes we've had there, we can either win or we can come damn close to it. So all that to say, we will have those candidates and recruit them. And I know everybody always asks, so are we recruiting candidates? The answer is yes, but I don't talk about it, okay? It's not something everybody is necessarily a part of, but it's always something that I welcome people to tell me about. And if you have candidates, and I'll tell you an area that we're recruiting a candidate here in a minute, I am all ears because we definitely need good quality candidates who are going to do the work and raise the money and have the messaging and a credibility to be able to pull. People in this room are not necessarily going to be enough people to win, right? So hopefully we all use our networks. That helps a lot, but you still have to have a lot of votes to win an election, and you have to have a lot of money. So the first thing I want to make sure that I address is going into 2024, we cannot win as well or as easily and have as much energy if we don't make sure that Michelle Shane, Dorothy Dow, and Ken Gibson win this year. So it's extremely important. So that's even something that I've talked with our candidates about. Well, I can't really announce all their names because they're not quite ready yet, but we're working on that. But I have talked to them and encouraged them to please reach out, either, work with the party, work with Michelle, work with Dorothy, but most importantly, get to those doors, start getting to know voters and getting into the routine to understand what it takes to do campaigning. So all that to say, we are going to win in 2024 and in 2023, and we're going to go into 2024 riding that energy and showing people in Greenville County that Democrats can win here. So the priority districts are not necessarily ones that everybody wishes that they were. But the reason that they're picked is because we, like I said, can hopefully flip them. And we're going to work really hard to do so, if not now, in the future. And so those are House 22, which is currently held by Jason Elliott. House 24, which is currently held by Bruce Bannister. House 27, which is currently held by David Vaughn. County Council 22, which is currently held by Stan Zubalakis. Senate 8, which is currently held by Ross Turner. Senate 12, which will be an open seat. And then Congressional District 4. So I have a candidate already for all of those seats except for House 24. So we need your help there. Definitely need somebody for that. That's Bruce Bannister's district. So it's like Augusta Road area, and then it goes down to Malden. It's pretty interesting. So even if people in this room like them, they're friends, they went to college, whatever, with these guys, they're not voting the way that we need them to. They're not showing up for our values. They might have a meeting before the vote and say, I don't really believe that way. Doesn't matter if they vote that way. So we have to make them vote the way that we need them to vote by getting somebody in there who will. And that's what this is about. So we have hired a consulting firm out of Orangeburg called Ford & Ford, and they will come up here and help us win these elections. That group has the expertise to flip red seats and has done it all over the country as well as in the state, both local all the way up to congressional districts. So what we're doing right now is to make sure that we keep our commitment to the Ford & Ford group and our candidates by going ahead and raising enough money to get them up here starting in July so that they can work with the candidates, do what we can to make sure we win in 2023, have these candidates help our current candidates, and then move seamlessly after our win joyfully into 2024. So I printed out at least 6 cards that are on the tables right now. If they're not on your table, ask a neighbor. And they say Priority 6 campaign. So they have a QR code on there. And based off of the fact that I know there are 107 people in this room, every single one of you contributed $100. We would be on our way to make sure that the Ford & Ford group is here and ready to start in July. So let's make that happen. Any amount is helpful, but that's just what I'm saying, like 100 from each of you would really help us a lot. Now, it's not just going to be the coordinated director either, and I'm looking for Laura in case I'm going over time, but we're talking about providing a real shared staff for these candidates so that we have shared costs. It's a little bit easier to manage. And then everybody, of course, will manage their own and have their own campaign plans for each district. I think that's pretty much the overview, other than the Get Out the Vote Democrat of the Month program, which is really incentivizing from the party's perspective and any candidate campaign who wants to participate to make sure that we are incentivizing people on a monthly basis to make those voter contacts and also to help bring people to the block parties we're going to have. So at least I can touch on that. I'm glad to talk to anybody about the block parties, the Priority 6, and the Get Out the Vote Democrat of the Month program after. But now I'll take questions.
Can I just ask you?
Yeah.
In the meeting yesterday, you had some numbers about how much you're looking for on this program that might help people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Okay, so we need $15,000 by the middle of July. So we had our first donation on Saturday night from somebody from Fairfield County. And then we had our second one yesterday from somebody in Augusta Road area. So we need y'all's help. Really, we do. And financially and then your volunteer. You can, or you can scan that code. Either way.
I'll put the code in the after lunch email so that everybody will have it. Questions for Amanda? We can come to you.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
I really appreciate your presenting that to us. Because one of the things that I learned when I was in Columbia real quick is that the Republicans don't have friends among us or anybody else in their constituency.
Mhm.
The only thing that they have is loyalty to an agenda. And this is why so many of the opponents of Donald Trump right now are backing him up in terms of his indictment. They're focused solely on their agenda. So I will be making a contribution. I wish I could make a large one, but I will make a small contribution.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Representative.
Other questions for Amanda? Want another minute or two?
Well, I'll talk about the barbecue if you want.
Yes.
Well, the other QR code that's floating around, it was in the back of my mind because I knew I didn't probably have enough time to mention, is the barbecue. It's on September 9th. And we welcome, of course, our 2023 candidates to really be featured at that one. We really hope to be rallying people to get out and make our calls and get to doors and make sure everybody gets out to vote. That is, part of it, as well as fellowship and fun. So there's some QR codes that say barbecue at the top. If it's not priority 6, and it'll say that at the top. And the tickets are $25. We'll be taking sponsorships for that until August 9th so that we can get everything to the printer. The money from the barbecue is really to help us with get out the vote efforts for this year for our 2023 candidates. So some of it might help us with some block parties. Some of it might help us with mailers, robocalls, door hangers, and other things like that. I don't know if people really realize how much campaigns cost. Mailers are sometimes, we spent $8,000 on a mailer last year. So that's why we need this money to make sure that we can help our candidates.
The block parties, what are those?
Okay, the block parties, thanks for asking. So in my analysis, I noticed, and while I was watching the numbers come in during early voting last year, I noticed that there are several consistently low turnout precincts in the city and in the county, but right now we're focused on the city. So I identified 11 precincts that need some leadership. So if anybody wants to help with that, I would love to hear that. But the block parties are going to combine some of those low turnout precincts, depending on their geography, that kind of thing, how much of it's actually in the city, et cetera. To have a community engagement event, like really engaging, learning from the communities, talking with them, and also giving them a really great opportunity to meet with our candidates for 2023. And so in this endeavor, our goal is to get 50 people to each block party. And if 50 people come to 5 block parties, because like I said, I combined some and prioritized some. So if we have 5 block parties in the city, we get 50 people to each one of those, and those 50 people will tell just 3 people besides themselves to go vote. We'll increase the voter turnout by, I believe it was 1,500, which is a significant boost that is very much needed to ensure that Michelle and Dorothy can win and that Ken is reelected. So it's super important. And I see our councilwoman, Councilwoman Lillian Brock Fleming, who's already helping us with getting started with precincts 6 and 7. And we're going to continue to work together on that. And then a few more of you, like Kat Dunleavy right here, has really been helping out with making sure people, have somebody ask questions and things as we move forward. And as soon as we have those dates for the block parties, we've asked people to adopt one so that it's not just me having to organize all of them. We're going to start boosting and asking for people to make phone calls into those precincts to assure that we get to the 50 that we need. Thanks for that question. Okay. Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
On the subject of the block parties, Evelyn Nocella is involved in that. And she and I have discussed providing the voter registration effort for the block parties, because we have, that is a hallmark of this room, that a lot of you do voter registration all the time. And I think we can really help out by taking that off Amanda's plate. So if you're interested in that, see Evelyn.
Well, I was going to say, I am looking at precinct 26 and 28, both of them organizing the block parties. So if you're in that precinct, that's roughly Overbrook area, and also behind Bob Jones, on both sides of Pleasantville around Boston. If you live in that area and one of those is a precinct, if you know some of the Democrat in those areas, please, I'll be around. If you come up to me after the discussion, I'd love to talk with you. Thank you. Thank you, Evan.
Thank you, Evelyn. And thank you, Amanda. It's been almost exactly 1 year since the Supreme Court handed down the Dobbs decision. That was on June 24th, day that will live in infamy. It was a day that changed something essential in this country. Women lost more than the right to an abortion. They lost, excuse me. I'm sorry, I forgot. I've been asked to announce that we have a lot of extra food. I'm gonna come back to this point. Linda's glaring at me. We have a lot of extra food. If you did not pay to eat, be our guests. There's food in the back. If you did pay to eat more. But do it quietly. Okay, so picking up where I left off. Women lost more than the right to an abortion. They lost the right to health care. And in some states like ours, we're relegated to the role of a human incubator with little or no value beyond being a vessel necessary to safely deliver a child. This is a substantive and dynamic shift, and it cannot stand. Our guests today represent three significant, if different, avenues to fighting this abomination. On the legislative front, finding ways to support women's needs for abortion care and reproductive health care, working to hold the line in states across the country where women still have reproductive rights, because we cannot allow a national abortion ban to happen. Healthcare and the impact on medical professionals, the avenues open to them as they straddle the line between what's legal and what's moral. Legislative, and how we can gain ground back with legislation in the State House, and how organizations like Planned Parenthood can maneuver in the gray areas as they strive to help women in crisis or just provide basic women's reproductive care. And philanthropic, looking at ways we can all come together as a community to exponentially increase the power of small donations and help secure abortion rights in other states and ensure abortion care for women around the country. The core question we put to these experts today is, what can we do now? We're going to start with each speaker taking 5 to 7 minutes to present their ideas on the topic. Then we're going to bring them together as a panel over here to answer your questions. So a few were pre-submitted, but most didn't submit the question in advance. So I'm expecting that you're all going to have a lot of questions for these really great, exciting panelists. And we're going to get started with Dr. Bingham. Dr. Dawn Bingham is a board-certified OBGYN who practices at Prisma Health Richland Hospital. She's the chair of the South Carolina section of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and has been a tireless advocate for women's health and welfare, representing the OBGYN medical community, lobbying in both Columbia and Washington. In 2020, many of you remember, she ran for state senate against incumbent Scott Talley in District 12. And I would urge you, as a Scott Talley constituent, to run again. Dawn, you have the floor.
Thank you for having me join you today for this lovely lunch and panel discussion. the day off today, so it really worked out well. When we're on call over the weekend, we usually have the Mondays off, so it was perfect timing. So I was really happy to be able to make it here today. When I see a group of women in this setting, I am just so delighted to have the opportunity to talk with you about what I know is your learned and lived experience. Because what I know as an OBGYN in South Carolina for the past 20 years is that I trained here in Greenville, by the way, at Greenville Hospital before it was Prisma. That was where I did my residency. Is that 1 in 4 women access abortion services during the course of their lifetime. That means if you're looking at 100 of us in this room, that's at least 25, right? And what I know is that every one of them had their reasons to need those services. It could have been a desired pregnancy that something had happened with. It could be an unplanned pregnancy that they did not think that they could have in their life at that time. But everybody has their reasons, and all those reasons are valid. What I know as an obstetrician and as a gynecologist and as a mother of 4 and as a sister and as a friend and as an aunt and as a person, that there's no other scenario in medicine in which we force people or ask people to use their bodies to save or sustain the life of another, even under duress. Nothing. For blood transfusions, you have to have a consent, right? For bone marrow transfusions, you have to have a consent. For cadaver donations, you have to have a consent, right? So what I know, having just come off a call this weekend, I'm reminded all the time, and I work with residents. What I know is that pregnancy is not a benign condition and that everybody needs to choose to go forward into it willingly and not forced because of the implications. If anybody in here has ever been pregnant, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. If anybody in here has ever been pregnant and their body went back to being exactly the same after being pregnant, please raise your hand. Right. And that is not counting the people that have had pregnancy complications that included mortality. They can't raise their hand. South Carolina has one of the highest maternal mortalities in our country and in the developed world. Pregnancy is not a benign condition, and people need to be able to go into it willingly, understanding how much their bodies can change, possibly not making it through that pregnancy. What I know about what happens in medicine from this time last year is the 7 weeks that we were under DOB was chaos and confusion inside our healthcare system. Not only for the individual patients that we could not listen to standard of care medicine and evidence-based medicine guidelines, national guidelines, and use those to take care of people. Those individual stories are plenty, and you've heard them, you've read them. My stories and my experiences, I can't cover in 5 to 7 minutes, but they're extensive. And I'm happy afterwards to answer your questions about that. But those individual patients deserve the medical care that we have come to expect in this country, which is in partnership with your physician, knowing that your physician is objective and concerned about you, and not concerned about their own beliefs. Not concerned about whether or not you're going to go to jail for taking care of you according to evidence-based medicine. Because we had to walk a fine line. We had to have criminal defense attorneys put on retainer because medical malpractice does not cover criminal cases. To take care of people. And what I know, if you take just the patient care side of it out of it, is all the work groups and workarounds that had to happen so that we knew what we could do day to day, took away time and energy and care from other patients that were removed from that situation. That's absolutely the truth. What I know is that our applicants to our residency programs and to our medical schools went down across the country to OBGYN, 9% to OBGYN.
people rethought that decision about why would I go to a state like South Carolina to practice medicine if they allow their legislator to criminalize physicians for taking care of people according to evidence-based medicine and standard of care guidelines. And that's just not OBGYN. Our recruiters have had a difficult time recruiting other physicians because they're like, I don't want to practice in an environment like that. Where standard of care medicine and evidence-based medicine is not listened to. And then we saw the threat of what would happen to our actual healthcare system if you forced people to have pregnancies. Think about who is at the front desk when you go to your doctor's office, who is taking your blood, who is taking care of you in the hospital. Primarily, the healthcare system is women. When we started to see people having to travel for abortion access or having to be pregnant when they did not want to be and face those implications of being pregnant, we saw people possibly having to drop out of their clinical rotations from medical school. We saw people not being able to be in nursing. We saw people not being able to come to their jobs appropriately. The healthcare system would collapse under this. I'm probably thinking that might have been my sign. That was my time, whatever that buzzer was. Okay. Because this is a topic that I usually give in an hour or more format. I actually talked to the South Carolina Medical Association that for the first time ever, they invited me and another physician who does adolescent gynecology to come and talk to the Medical Association at the annual meeting in Myrtle Beach. They give us 2 hours, and they had never asked for anybody to speak on abortion before. And this is the first time we were like, we're going to make use of that time. And we did. And it was standing room only for 2 hours talking about this, because there's a lot of aspects about this that affect not only the patient care, but the practice of medicine in general. When you have people who don't practice medicine dictating how medicine should be practiced, the physicians and the patients really suffer, because I will tell people that stress comes from 2 things, essentially. One is your expectations not being met, whatever the situation is. So if you can't take care of patients appropriately, that's very stressful for physicians. And 2, you don't have the resources to take care of the situation, whatever it is in front of you. And so if you're not given the resources to take care of patients, that's also very stressful on the medical system. So with the last thing I will leave you with is that I am happy to take your questions. I am here to be a resource for you. I know how closely I am to this topic. I take care of patients who are in life and death situations all the time around this topic. And that 7 weeks that we were under Dobbs was disastrous for them. And I listened to my colleagues across the country who are in Tennessee, Louisiana, Missouri, and their patients are suffering. But my colleagues are also suffering, because you go into medicine to take care of people. And when you can't, it's really devastating to the practice of medicine as a whole, and it affects the entire society. Thank you for your time.
I don't know if it is or not, but let's take a look. No, it's off. But I'm going to move it anyway, because maybe that's the problem. Thank you very much, Don. Vicki Ringer of Planned Parenthood is no stranger to Democratic women. She's visited with us before, and we were very pleased she could be in person with us today. I offered her Zoom, but she said, I understand you have a problem getting your Zoom meetings right, so I better just come in person. I'm only kidding. She didn't say that. Vicki is the Director of Public Affairs and the Chief Lobbyist for Planned Parenthood South Atlantic. She and Planned Parenthood have been a tireless fighter for women's reproductive rights in Columbia. I can only imagine what an emotionally draining job this has been for the past 6 months. Near and dear to my heart, Vicki also has a journalism degree from USC. Vicki, you have the floor.
Can y'all hear me with this?
Yeah, that works. I don't like to be behind a podium. I like to move. I like to look you in the eye when I talk to you. I work for Planned Parenthood South Atlantic. We are one of many affiliates in this country under the national umbrella of Planned Parenthood. I work for an affiliate that covers South Carolina, North Carolina. Oh, I'm sorry, you were recording. Okay.
They can hear you.
All right, good. West Virginia and Virginia. Well, it used to be that all of our states were fairly comfortable and safe about abortion because of Roe, right? 50 years of Roe taken away almost a year ago. And what happened in South Carolina? You have to kind of go back every year. Even though there was Roe, we battled abortion bans at the State House. It was an academic exercise, but it was one that they felt like they needed to do to, I guess, punish women and to let us know that we were always under their control. In 2021, because Trump was president, and they had seen the coming of new legislation, new Supreme Court justices. They passed a heartbeat ban in 2021. And sure enough, well, we went to court and that was blocked in 2021 because of Roe. Well, when Dobbs overturned Roe, a year ago, they went to court to have that blockage lifted. And sure enough, the court said, yeah, you're entitled to go into effect with this. And so that's what Don was talking about, the time when Dobbs was in effect. It was a 6-week ban that was in effect for 6 weeks, and it was chaos. I can't begin to tell you the stories that we heard from women who were petrified. Because women who have money have always been able to get the care they need. Even before Roe, women could get on a plane and go anywhere and get an abortion. Who suffers are people who don't have money. People who have children and can't leave them, people who don't have childcare, who don't have reliable transportation. It's hard enough for many people to take a day off to come to Columbia. So imagine we had to send most of our patients to North Carolina for care. But what also happened as a result was abortion funds rose up and have really come to the rescue of so many women. We used to see one of the main reasons women waited longer for their abortions, they had to save the money or borrow the money or raise the money to have an abortion because insurance doesn't pay. And of course, South Carolina has one of the highest rates of uninsured women in the country. So they had to pay cash. Now, I will tell you that abortion at Planned Parenthood is not especially expensive. It's under $600. And it's been that way for about 10 years. We have intentionally kept those rates low because we're a nonprofit and we're a safety net provider, meaning we don't turn away anyone. We will give discounted rates, we'll set up payment plans, anything you need to get the care you need. So when people ask to donate to Planned Parenthood, that's where that money goes. It's to help take care of poor women. But for those 6 weeks, it was terrible. And then in August of last year, the Supreme Court says, no, you've got to stop this. We're going to grant an injunction until we can hear this. Because we had always sued in federal court. But once Roe was overturned, we didn't have any options at the federal level. But there was this unknown little clause in the U.S. South Carolina Constitution. Your rights to privacy shall not be violated. Privacy in your persons, your papers. And we said, ding. So we sued in the state and got that injunction. And so that's how. So that's how we have been able to continue providing abortion, even though a 6-week ban was passed. And in January, the Supreme Court said, yes, it is a violation of your privacy. At 6 weeks, most women don't even know they're pregnant. And in fact, I think there was a study that said by the time most people learn they're pregnant, decide what to do about that pregnancy, and get an appointment, it's right at 9 weeks. So to think that somebody's going to find out they're pregnant, make an appointment right now because of the bans in other states. We have a lot of people coming here from other states. It takes about 3 weeks to get an appointment now. And if you have a 6-week ban, well, if we had a 6-week ban, nobody would be coming from out of state either. So it's a catch-22. But once again, they passed, and please know that this is all Republicans, passed another 6-week ban in this year, just in special session, because McMaster called them back to pass a ban. So they did it. They bragged that they stopped a total abortion ban because they're passionate after all. So they passed another 6-week abortion ban, even though the Supreme Court had said, no, those violate the Constitution. Well, they said, we wrote it differently this time. We think it's going to pass. We had a senator say that there comes a point in a pregnancy where the rights of the fetus exceed the rights of the pregnant woman. So he said the quiet part out loud. We knew that that's where they stood. And what has to happen, as you've already heard from Amanda, is that we've got to beat these people. We have got to stop them. What we know, to use Dawn's words, what we know is that even people who consider themselves pro-life, and not we all pro-life, yes, they have co-opted our language too. But people who are opposed to abortion generally thinks it's not a place for the government, that it should be a private decision between a woman and her family and her doctor and her own God, but not the government. And that's all we've ever said. The government doesn't dictate any other care in this world, but they dictate what happens to a woman's body. And we have been fairly complacent about it. We have not made it an important issue. When I talk to people, they say, oh, I'm pro-choice. So who'd you vote for this office? Well, the Republican. And I said, you're pro-choice, but you voted for the Republican. Well, I'm not a one-issue voter. Well, you better get that. Because the people who are opposed to abortion are also the ones banning your books, denying health care to LGBTQ kids. Anything that is troublesome in this state, it is Republicans doing it. So if you care about climate change, if you care about anything, you're not voting for Republicans. So I'm going to be up here with Ford and Amanda and making sure that we get some good candidates elected, because it's important. Anytime I hear somebody say something about a candidate running and that they didn't vote, they said, well, he didn't inspire me. And I tell people, Barack Obama is not coming back. you are not gonna find that unicorn again. So instead of worrying about being inspired or what the other guy's gonna do for you, worry about what the Republican is gonna do to you. So let's get inspired to save our own damn lives, because that is at stake with this. And so we are gonna be back in court in 2 weeks, arguing this thing again for a 6-week ban. I urge you to get involved, and if nothing else, make this a fight for you and for the generations that follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. Oops, off my notes. So many of you will know Marsha Wallace as the co-founder of Dining for Women, now known as Together Women Rise. Born in Greenville in 2003, Together Women Rise became the largest global giving circle movement in the world. What began in her kitchen, because she wanted to do something to help women in the developing world to overcome poverty, gender discrimination, and educational barriers, grew to have over 470 chapters and 35,000 activated global citizens. Since its inception, the organization has put more than $7 million into boots on the ground programs that have directly impacted more than 250,000 women and girls. My point is, when Marsha focuses her passion on a problem, she gets it done. The Dodds decision rocked this former obstetric nurse to her core, and she founded the We the Women project on the Giving Circle model that she'd already made successful. Full disclosure, I'm also a partner with Marsha on this program, and she's going to talk to us about it now. Marsha, you've got the floor.
Hi. Thank you, Laura, for helping me with We the Women and for all you've done for Democratic women. I mean, we rock. I remember when I heard that the Supreme Court had ruled to take away federal protection for abortions, just like some people talk about remembering when John F. Kennedy was shot, or seeing the towers fall. I'm getting chills. Yeah. I stood at the end of my kitchen counter, and the implications of it just fell over me like boulders. I have 4 kids. I have 4 grandchildren. And it takes everybody in our family to support all these kids, and we have resources. And I worked for so long to support women and girls in developing countries for exactly this kind of thing, helping them find their agency, their autonomy, and their voices so they could become all they could be. And the idea of forced birth is the antithesis of independence and autonomy and self-realization. It'll set economically, on every level, it will set us back, and it crushed me. And I became depressed and despairing. And I just felt like I had to do something. I just couldn't not do something, but I didn't know what. And Laura had brought the States Project to my attention, which I'll talk about in a minute. But so the idea for We the Women was born. My friend Robin Phillips is also a co-founder of We the Women. That's her brilliant name. The Giving Circle model is familiar to me, and I thought I could do this. So the idea of We the Women is to use the Giving Circle model for a 2-pronged goal. One is to raise money for national abortion funds to provide immediate support for women who can obtain abortions where it's legal. And in the states where it's legal, the clinics are seeing huge numbers, double the numbers of women that are seeking help. So they're stressed out stress-wise. It's taking longer to get appointments. So the procedures they require are more expensive and it's just overwhelming. These women need help now. But then what are we going to do to try to protect the rights that still exist for the future? So the States Project is a political action committee that focuses on state legislative races in areas where the margin is very thin to protect the liberal majority. So I thought, well, the States Project is a way to work within legislatures where there is a chance of shifting power tangibly. They've analyzed it. They're focusing their efforts strategically. That was the key thing for me, strategically. Sometimes donating to political campaigns feels like you're flipping a coin or throwing a dart at a dartboard, and you don't know what's going to happen. You just know you want to help. Well, this is a very strategic way of making a big difference. Then the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project is a national abortion fund that was founded in 1991 in California, and they provide funding to over 700 vetted clinics across the country for women who need financial help getting abortions. So I thought, well, with this model of giving circles, tackling the problem immediately with help for people who need it now, and then trying to protect our rights where they currently exist so we don't lose it, we can maybe make a big impact. So that's We the Women. You're the first group of people to hear about it, really. I guess we're official, Laura, now. But when the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project in 2022 had a budget of $1,049,000, and they were able to assist 6,010 women. They have a hotline, and they have an abortion pill project also. The States Project in 2022 picked 13 states, and they maintained or gained ground in all of those states. The information about their success is on our website, which is wethewomenproject.com. So with this two-pronged approach, I personally feel like there's a strategy for short-term and long-term progress. The benefit of giving circles is that each person who participates doesn't have to do a lot or give a whole lot, because the goal is to have a whole lot of people giving a little, and then you end up making a big impact. So We the Women Project is a national and virtual project, meaning that we are not limited by state or city. People can participate wherever they are. We're hoping that small groups of people will get together for wine and hors d'oeuvres or whatever format they choose and make a donation to the We the Women Project. When on our website, you'll see two different donation buttons. One is to the RAP, the National Abortion Fund. That's a nonprofit organization, and you will get a tax deduction. The other is a political action committee, and so you don't get a tax deduction, but you do get a receipt. The platform that we're using to manage donations and disperse the funds is this fabulous technology organization called Grapevine. Grapevine provides all the technology infrastructure for maintaining membership roles for each giving circle. When you make a donation, it goes to Grapevine. We the Women we don't touch any of the money. And then they disperse the funds also. They give you the receipts and then they send the money to the organizations. The States Project gives 100% of all donations to the campaigns. And RAP, the nonprofit in California, has a very healthy, responsible balance of program and administrative expenses. They're largely volunteer run, and they can really use our help because they do support projects all over the country. Ultimately, we would like to find larger organizations to collaborate with and partner with to help so members can find other ways of getting involved and taking action. 2024 will be a busy year for us politically. So there will be a lot to do. But if you're interested in learning more, go to wethewomenproject.com. And you can read more about both of these organizations that we're supporting and fill out registration forms so we can put you on our email list and keep you updated and hopefully make a donation to one or both of the organizations, because at this point, we are really brand new. I think for the States Project, we have 13 members so far. I'm hoping that this initiative will be for others what it is for me, which is a way to relieve my pain and sense of despair over what's happening to women around the country. And that besides being a pressure release valve for frustration and pain, that it will also be a powerful force for movement and making change, because we women are the ones who make the changes. We're the ones who I won't even get started on that. The other things you can do is we need other people to find out about We the Women. So if you would share the website on your social media platforms, that would be fabulous. If you would send us your stories, we have 100 people in this, so some of us have had abortions. We need to share stories so the stigma and shame becomes diminished. And then create your circle of friends and join We the Women, and we'll hopefully take the country by storm. Thank you.
Okay, if I can get all of the speakers to come to the table in the front. And then we're going to move this here. Want Caesar salad? Hopefully that gets everybody. I'm not sure I'll hear about it. Okay, so I want to thank the speakers for all that information. That's really terrific. I also want to point out it is beyond our normal leaving time. So I understand if some of you have to leave. We got a late start. I really hope most of you will stay, because I think this will be a really good discussion that we're about to have. So I want to start with some questions, and it's kind of open-ended. Any one of the speakers can jump in here, but I want to, this first one I want to address to Vicki. Some of these are the questions that came over the transom. Is there a mechanism for a statewide referendum? And if so, how would that work?
Unfortunately, South Carolina does not have a law that allows for a ballot referendum initiated by the public. And despite calls, bills to hold a referendum or a ballot measure for legal abortion, the Republican powers that be wouldn't even consider it. Why? Because they know they will lose. Ballot measures have been, depending on the question, anything to ban abortion has been rejected. Anything to preserve abortion has been passed. Kansas, Montana, Kentucky, all these red states, but every state that has held a referendum. Now what states are doing is changing the rules about ballot measures. They're saying instead of 51% or 50% plus one, they're requiring 60% in order to pass a referendum. Mississippi has passed a ballot measure process, but excluded abortion from it. They are raising the number of signatures you have to get to for petition. They're requiring a certain amount of signatures in each voting district. So they're just trying to make it impossible to pass, but no. But what you can do is continue to pressure legislators. If they can hold a ballot measure on Sunday alcohol sales or school bonds or rainy day funds, then they can hold a referendum on abortion. And if what they say that they're following the desires of their constituents, they'll be glad to do that and honestly take it out of their hands.
And I would add as well, is this on? Doesn't sound like it's on.
Yeah. Oh,
I would add as well that in Ohio, they are collecting signatures and numbers don't lie. And they have tried to change the ballot initiative in Ohio. But once you have numbers that are starting to get the attention of journalists, they have to start paying attention to that and at least address the fact that they've got 600, now 900,000 people who have signed on asking for a ballot initiative. So something like that could definitely be undertaken in South Carolina as well.
So, so Dr. Don, from a medical lobbying standpoint, is there anything that the medical community nationally or regionally or statewide can do in terms of lobbying the legislatures that hasn't been done yet, or is there any avenue there, or courts?
Yes, I would say, I would say for sure there is. We have done more in the recent 5 years than has been done in the past before that, because as Vicki was alluding to, every year we had the same exercise that would go on in the State House. We have a coalition of partners, including ACOG, which is the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, with Planned Parenthood, with REN, with other coalition partners. And each year we would join forces and we would fight these bills, and it would be kind of an exercise, an exhausting one, but one that we knew was coming. But without those protections, it became a little bit of a different fight. And to respond to that, we started from the medical side, we started to do a lot more education inside of the South Carolina Medical Association, which has been very, very conservative in the past and has not allowed for the conversation about abortion because it was too, quote unquote, polarizing to happen. Well, we have made sure that we kept pressing that issue through all the avenues that were available to us, as well as making sure that we were doing education at the resident level and at the medical student level, and basically helping to underwrite some of the projects that those groups of people who are up and coming in medicine, so they could be aware of this. And we have been very, very vocal with physicians and have done letter writing campaigns and letter signing campaigns. And here in Greenville, you may have noticed last September it actually was September the 11th. We had a full page ad in the Greenville News, in the Post and Courier, and in the state, showing over a span of 2 weeks' time, when we asked for signatures from physicians across the state, we had over 600 physicians that signed up in a 2-week period saying that they support abortion access. And the legislators can't ignore that, right? Yeah, but they can't, they don't have to act on it, but they can't ignore that, right? And it comes up because we can say that, and I can hold up that entire ad as a prop when I'm doing testifying, saying you have 600 people right here. And that same letter writing, that a hard copy that went on the floor while they were arguing and debating these things, that hard copy of that letter went out, and you can see legislators just flipping that page, looking for their doctor. Like, is my doctor on here? And they're like, oh, my doctor's on here. Right? So it makes a difference because it makes them aware that the general public and the medical community does not support abortion bans.
Let me add something to that. Doctors do this at great risk to themselves. MUSC is a state-supported hospital. Very little of its income comes from the state. But because any of it comes from the state, they are pressured politically. 2 doctors and 1 staff person have been removed from their positions because they advocated for health care for transgender children. They didn't do anything about it, and they never once said they worked for MUSC, but political pressure. 2 excellent, superior doctors who I would let work on my children and grandchildren any day, but that's what happened to them. So I am so grateful to Dr. Bingham and the other doctors she works with, because they will flood the state house, and it makes all the difference in the world because they have the credibility that I don't have.
Thank you. Marsha, can you talk a little bit about local giving circles, like how you see this community kind of coming together, potentially, local person-to-person way?
Well, the beauty of giving circles is that they're just informal groups of people who get together, and it can be around any sort of format. It could be a dinner, it could be wine and hors d'oeuvres, it could be anything. To talk about an issue, to take it, if you wanted to write postcards, if you wanted to, really, you can pick anything to gather around and then make a donation. Hopefully, well, I don't know, Laura, what do you think?
So it could be a politically motivated,
Yeah, totally.
giving circle as well.
Well, this is not there's nothing neutral about this issue. It is definitely a political issue. And I feel I never thought, after working so hard for women's empowerment globally, that this would be something we'd be facing in the United States. I just have to say, I really didn't. And now it's time to focus energy right here. And there is so much passion behind this issue. There's so much energy around it. There's so many people who are just fit to be tied. I would like to take that energy and harness it and run with it, so that we're literally doing something about it. Because voting, we can't do it without the voting, which is why, the state legislative races piece of it is so important. But that takes a while to play out. And I'm impatient and I want to do something now. Yeah.
So several people had this question, and I throw it out to anybody who wants to answer it. Do our actions really make a difference? So most of us have been calling and writing letters, and to the state house, rallying. and all of that. And yet legislators do not seem to feel that there are going to be any consequences at the ballot box. And in truth, there have not been many consequences at the ballot box. So other than the obvious, which of course is get everybody to vote, and
What matters most is what you don't do, because they know and pay attention more when they don't hear from you. That tells them a lot. Just because you call does not mean they're going to change their view or change the pressure that they feel from their party leaders. But if you don't call, you definitely won't change any minds. We had a Republican flip votes this year because they polled their district and found out where their constituents stood on abortion. So sometimes that's necessary. I wish we could afford a poll in every legislative district. Alas, we can't. But we know from every poll that's ever been done is that people oppose these bans. Honestly, Republicans don't really care as a general rule, but we have changed some votes. There were Republicans who voted no on this ban. So your calls matter, and calling one time and being done is not going to do it. You've got to call regularly. You've got to talk to them when you see them out in public, especially if it's one you know. Have a face-to-face conversation with them and tell them why it matters to you. And it's mostly men, but in the House, it's a lot of crazy women. And I'm just gonna say that. And a lot of them come from up here. And I'll just throw a name out, Ashley Trantham. I don't know what's going on with her. She's a Freedom Caucus member. And they are really kind of crazy, y'all. Really kind of crazy. But yes, your actions matter deeply. Don't ever think that what you do doesn't matter.
I wish I could tell you that it was a linear target, like you did this and X happens. It doesn't happen that way in advocacy. Advocacy is by its nature a very long game and effort. But I would like to give you an example of how the collective effort made a big difference. If you remember last summer, the House had a hearing where they allowed anybody and everybody to speak for 3 minutes apiece. For like 7 hours, right? It was an absolute circus. And I think at the end of it, they even realized like, we did the wrong thing here. Like we did this wrong. And so it looked bad on them because they were giving anybody with an opinion the same option to have commentary as experts who were in the field, either of obstetrics and gynecology or children's services and so forth. Well, taking that experience, what the Senate hearing decided to do, knowing how bad the House looked, is they decided to have 10 people who are kind of for the issue and 10 people who were against the issue speak for 10 minutes apiece so that they could educate the legislators, right? But that would not have happened if you had not shown up during those House hearings. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. So the collective actually made a huge difference last summer in that regard.
One last question, then I'll go to the audience. But what do you think the odds are, Vicki, of this law being struck down by the state Supreme Court?
Oh boy. As y'all might recall, there's a 5-member state Supreme Court. And the decision was decided, was ruled by 3 for the majority, 2 against. The person who wrote the majority opinion in January was Justice Kay Hearn. The state mandated retirement age for judges is 72, and she turned 72 last year. So this, she had to retire this year. And the legislature elects justices, well, all judges in South Carolina. The governor doesn't appoint like they do in some states. The people don't elect like they do in some states. It's just a handful of states where the legislature elects. I don't know what's better. I have problems with all of them, honestly. But instead of electing another woman, they elected another man. So we have 5 men on our state Supreme Court. We are the only state in the nation that has an all-male high court. But I try to remind myself, Roe was decided by all men. All men. I think we're fading in and out, but I'm loud usually. So I do worry about it because they have agreed to take it, the case. I think the right thing for them to have done was just to reject it, to deny the case, because they had precedent that had been decided in January. So the fact that they're taking it again causes me great concern. Some people think that they're doing it just to appease the legislature, but that they will quickly dismiss it again under the same, overturn that rule. I honestly don't know what we'll do if they do that. The only thing we can do is get rid of them and get people in who can do that, who can change the laws. So when I say voting matters, that's why.
I might need bail money.
Yeah.
We'll help you out there. Okay. Got a question. First.
Thank you. Vicki, and Dawn, all of you, really, what we probably need to remember is until the Supreme Court has a decision again, we still have the 22-week ban. So for this hopefully long period of time, it's not 6 weeks or 12 weeks, but we have a 22-week ban. And people come from other states to have abortions here in South Carolina until that time that it's, changed. The other thing I wanted to ask you, which is, or not one question, but the other thing that I do want to ask all of you is, do you think that these legislators are basing this on some religious feeling, or is it just a desire to keep women in their place, or is it based in their minds biblically? What is it that is driving them to establish that an embryo has as much rights as a fully grown human, female human?
All of the above. Honestly, it is all of the above. They say it's not a religious thing, that it's a moral thing. Well, it never was a moral thing before. Until the 1900s, abortion was mostly legal across the country until quickening. So the reason it became illegal was not because of the desire to protect women or children. It was because midwives and independent practitioners were providing abortions. And Dawn notwithstanding, it was doctors who saw lost revenue, and they urged legislators to pass a ban. They were losing clients, patients. Doctoring has come a long way too, but more than anything, it's political. It is part of the Republican platform, and that's where they go. Democrats feel no such compunction. They will easily vote against something that's in our platform. We had 2 Democrats who voted for the ban from the PD, so we're safe.
That's an excellent question and probably deserves its whole like half-day seminar, right? But I don't pretend to be in the minds of any of these Republicans, but from the 30,000 foot view and looking at this over several years, it seems as if it works with their worldview of what women are supposed to do with their bodies to serve their communities, to serve men, to serve the state, etc. But women get to decide what to do with their bodies. Women do not owe their bodies or the trajectory of their health and their life to the state.
I know we're mostly focused on the abortion issue and pregnancy and what have you today, but I am curious, what is the effect of all of this focus, monetarily and effort-wise on protecting abortion? What effect is that having on healthcare vision in general for women? I know Planned Parenthood does a lot of healthcare that doesn't even concern pregnancy. And I don't know how much Dawn does in that area, but I'm just curious what is the general effect in South Carolina, especially without the expanded Medicare?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question, and one that I was trying to allude to a little bit in my comments, is that it takes up all the oxygen in the room, right? Because it's such a fundamental, basic premise that we are going to allow people the opportunity to make choices about their own body and their health, that when you move off of that, hello, maybe try this one. Maybe this is the lucky one. When you move off of that, it's very difficult to focus on other issues, because that is so core and fundamental to how we have learned how to practice medicine, and our general value system as physicians is that we partner with you in your healthcare decisions, and we objectively give you the options, and we do true informed consent. These are all the options. These are all the risks. These are all the benefits. What would you like to choose from the menu? Right? But if we withhold that by saying, hey, this is actually an option, but we can't provide it, we have to fight back. It is an absolute imperative as a physician that we not only take care of people clinically, but that we advocate for medicine in general. And so it takes up all the oxygen in the room. And you can see that other efforts have suffered. We don't focus nearly. I mean, if you had asked me 20 years ago, is this what you're going to be doing? No, I didn't think that, right? I thought I was going to be making women's healthcare better across the line for HPV vaccines, lactation issues, extending women's life. But what we know now is that actually large insurance companies have reached out to ACOG and said, hey, what does this look like if this actually goes into effect? Because we're going to start changing premiums, because looking at the numbers, women's life expectancy is going to go down across the board, right? That was like, I had not seen that one coming, right? So it takes up all the oxygen in the room.
Life expectancy has gone down for the first time in decades.
This is for Dr. Dunn. This is related to what you were talking about. I've heard that a lot of medical schools are not teaching anything about how to deal with abortions for the future. And how will that affect women's health if they go into the doctor for other purposes? It seems like there's a lot that happens for years that they would still need that knowledge.
So we had an interesting thing happen last summer where we had a woman who had just had a baby and started to hemorrhage after she had been over on the postpartum side, and started to hemorrhage, and we brought her back over to labor and delivery because we were going to need to do a DNC. And one of our own labor and delivery nurses was like, you can't do that surgery now. That's illegal. We're like, she just had a baby. She's not pregnant, right? A DNC is something that you do as a course of being an obstetrician gynecologist for menstrual bleeding, for instance, right? Or retained products if somebody has a miscarriage, right? This is very common, right? So if that if that specter of like criminalization or misunderstanding were to affect medical education, which I don't know that it has quite yet, that would be very bad for women's health. As far as residency programs, all residency programs for OBGYNs by the ACGME standards, which is the accredited graduate medical education standards, have to have a program that teaches about abortion because it is part of teaching about DNCs. People have to opt out of that to not do it. Like, but you have to cognitively say that it's not an opt-in program. You have to opt out. If you have like some function about only learning DNCs and not learning about abortions with DNCs sort of thing, right? So I do think it could affect medical education depending on how far the spectrum of like criminalization goes.
I have a question for Marsha. You mentioned the mifepristone pill program that RAP has. Can you talk a little bit about that?
About the program that RAP has specifically?
Yeah.
Well,
Which is something we can donate.
right. You could, if you wanted to make a donation specifically for that program, it's the medical abortion program, which is done usually under 10 weeks, and you can do it at home, hopefully with support. And I was surprised to learn that a large number of people are not aware of that as an option. And you can actually, there's this woman, an obstetrician. Have you heard of Jennifer Lincoln, Portland, Oregon?
Yes.
Who is promoting
Mayday
the
Health.
Mayday Health, Mayday.health.
We are working on getting billboards here for South Carolina.
Right. It's a phenomenal program because she founded this nonprofit that provides the medications for these medical abortions. So you can order them and have them shipped to you, and it's legal.
Not
So-
in South Carolina.
Well, if you don't have it, if you just get it from somebody else from another state, is that not legal?
It's not legal to possess them unless you got it from a doctor. But who's telling? I've ordered it.
So,
Aid access.
but that's,
Not order.
yeah, that's gonna be an area that needs to be more fully developed, don't you think? To be able to, I was reading Nate, the 538 website, y'all familiar with that, Nate Silver's website? Yeah. But they got data from June through, or July through December of last year, and from all their various data points, there were 65,000 women who were unable to obtain abortions legally in their state. And of those 65,000, 31,000 of them did go out of state, and the others, they don't know if they were able to get medication abortions or if they just carried their pregnancies or what exactly happened to them. But I don't know what else we can do if the ban isn't struck down here. We've got the whole corner of the Southeast that's all banned. Getting out of these banned areas to where you can get an abortion is going to be so complicated. I think maybe I'm with you. Somebody may need to start saving bail money for me to start promoting the medication abortion, which is safe the vast majority of the time.
60% of all abortions in South Carolina are medication abortions.
60%.
Can a doctor still prescribe mifepristone?
They can for medical reasons.
Yes, you can. You can prescribe medication abortion here still in South Carolina. What you have to do is you have to actually meet the patient. It's one of the states that requires you to have a face-to-face meeting with the patient to do that. But you can also have it mailed to you, but you can't have it mailed to you from the United States. So you can have it mailed to you internationally. So Aid Access will do that for you. You get it shipped to you internationally. It's another abortion organization.
AIDACCESS.org.
And the
It is. You've probably seen the documentary, I think it was called Vessel, which has two meanings. It's a floating mercy ship that provides abortions offshore in international waters in countries where it's banned. And I believe those are the same doctors that started Aid Access.
Yeah, and the other one that she was mentioning is with Jennifer Lincoln is called Mayday Health. Like Mayday. Yeah, Mayday Health. And it is another organization that provides information and abortion access for people. The interesting thing about the medication abortion access is that when they were talking about the mifepristone not being possibly legal, one of the things people don't realize is not only is medication abortion the most common way that people access abortion, but it's also how we treat many miscarriages now with this medication. And people don't realize that the way in the world of having to have a DNC to have an abortion or to treat a miscarriage, it has really gone kind of to the sideline. We generally do it with medication abortion or the same medicine for somebody who's having an incomplete miscarriage.
I've got to leave out, I'm sorry about that, but I wanted to give this announcement, and I appreciate you saying this. The Greenville branch of the NAACP, along with the state branch of the NAACP, is going to have a prayer vigil and rally on Saturday, June 24th. Because if we don't say, like you said, it may be slow, but if we keep our mouth shut, our big problem is we have a lot of children who cannot get health care. We got 340,000 people who can't get anything because they will not expand Medicaid. The other thing is our schools are losing money and they're taking money from them and they're closing schools who have Black superintendents and will not turn them back over to the board. We got a lot of issues. Abortion is just one. And if we work on all of them, they have got to know we need buses, we need children, we need everybody. We'll be at the State House for 2 hours, or no more than 2 hours and a half, because I know who's in charge and I know they and we're gonna limit the number of people. We're gonna have more prayers. We're gonna have 4 or 5 people to pray for 4 minutes. That's it. And then we're gonna have one song, and then we're gonna have 2 or 3 speakers, and that's it. Because you don't have to keep saying it over and over again. The problem is great. Folks, if we sit around and do nothing, no wonder. You know, it's bad enough. We're also working with young people in colleges on voter registration. September 19th is the day, and the League of Women Voters, the National Council of Women, we're working with the NAACP and others. But we're working September 19th of last year. We had almost 250 kids to register to vote and to vote. I'm just saying, and if we get the rest of them, my God, we can get something done. I'm saying is that folks stand up, like you said, it is slow. But it is the best way we can get them done. If we have buses, people can tell these people to drop dead, and some people to run for them, like the people gonna run here, because I got a group of people that we're working on. If we get 50 people to change their mind and vote, we can make a difference and change this town.